They arrested him like he was nobody. An old man in a rusted-out pickup, moving slow, barely speaking, just a busted taillight and a registered firearm. They laughed at his faded military jacket, mocked his war stories, threw him in a holding cell like he was nothing. 30 minutes later, 3 black SUVs rolled up, and the FBI walked through the door. No one was laughing anymore. "License and registration," Officer Kevin Driscoll muttered, one hand resting on his belt, the other braced on the window of an old Chevy pickup. Behind the wheel sat Harold E. Trammell, quiet, black, late 60s or early 70s, with deep creases carved into his face like they'd been cut by time itself. His eyes were tired, but not weak. His voice was gravel-smoothed. "Yes, sir," he said calmly, reaching for his documents. A worn military fatigue jacket hung from his shoulders, faded patches nearly threadbare. His beard was rough. His movements, slow but steady. Everything about him said, "This man has C." From the passenger side, Officer Corey Jensen shifted, hand resting inches from his holster, trying to read danger in the man's stillness. "You know why we stopped you?" Jensen asked. "Busted taillight," Harold replied, already handing over his license and registration. "Got the part, just haven't gotten around to fixing it." Driscoll looked over the documents. Everything checked out. Clean record, no warrants. But something about Harold rubbed him the wrong way. Maybe the calm, maybe the way he stared straight ahead, without fear. "You military?" Jensen asked, nodding at the jacket. Harold gave a small nod. "Retired, long time ago." "What branch?" Driscoll pressed. "Army, Special Recon, Southeast Asia." Driscoll raised a skeptical brow. "Special Recon, huh?" "Routine check," Driscoll said flatly. "There's a pistol in there," Harold replied. "Military issue, registered." "You didn't mention that earlier." "You didn't ask." That was all it took. Tension snapped tight like wire. Driscoll yanked the door open. Out of the vehicle. Now. Harold moved slowly, deliberately, hands where they could see. "It's legal. Been mine since '73. Not even loaded." "Didn't matter." Jensen retrieved the weapon. "You got a permit?" "Back pocket." They snatched it, looked it over, still moved to cuff him. Harold didn't resist. "This doesn't feel right," he murmured. "You're not calling the shots today," Driscoll barked. The cuffs clicked. Not too tight, just tight enough to humiliate. As they walked him to the cruiser, Harold said something soft, almost to himself. "In '85, I led a mission in Thailand, pulled 14 hostages out alive. Never even got a thank you letter." Driscoll snorted. "I don't lie," Harold replied. Not angry, just tired. They drove him to the Stoneview County Sheriff's Office. He didn't say another word, just watched the road like he'd memorized every mile of it years ago. Back at the station, Jensen cracked jokes with dispatch about old G.I. Joe and his junkyard truck. Driscoll typed up the report. "Claims he was special ops or something," Driscoll muttered. "Probably watched Platoon one too many times." They tossed Harold in a holding cell. He sat on the bench like a man waiting for a bus, not scared, not angry, just waiting. Then came the ping. Not the usual suspended license alert, not a local warrant, federal, red level. Then another, and then, just as Driscoll leaned over to pick up the ringing phone, headlights sliced across the glass front of the station. 3 black SUVs, unmarked, no sirens, no hesitation. Jensen sipped from his coffee, watching Harold through the holding cell window. He hasn't moved. "Weird, like he's waiting for something?" Driscoll rolled his eyes. "He's bluffing, was probably logistics or something. Maybe did a few drills back in the '80s. Deputy Carla Mendes walked in. "You boys even run a full ID on him yet?" "We're getting to it," Driscoll muttered. "You should have done that before locking him up," she replied sharply. Then came the voice on the line, cold, direct. "You have Harold E. Trammell in custody?" Driscoll hesitated. Yeah. Who's asking?" This is Agent Valdez with the Bureau. We're on site. Do not release him. Do not speak to him. Do not touch him. Secure him now. Click. Before anyone could react, the station doors opened, men in suits. No words. Badges raised. "Where is Harold Trammell?" Valdez asked. Driscoll stammered. "From this point forward," Valdez said, "this man is a protected federal asset. If you have an issue with that, call the Pentagon." Inside the cell, Harold looked up. He didn't smile. But something behind his eyes said, "Told you." Valdez opened the cell himself. "Sergeant Trammell." "Took you long enough," Harold said, rising stiffly. "Traffic in Birmingham's a mess," Valdez replied. As Harold stepped out, Jensen stuttered, "We didn't know who he was. We were just following protocol." "You didn't know," Agent Chin snapped, "because you didn't listen." Then came the file printout. Harold E. Trammell, Master Sergeant, 4th Recon Unit, Black classified for 2 decades. Stationed in Beirut, Thailand, El Salvador, Sierra Leone. Pentagon citation, Medal of Valor. The pistol, linked to a mission in 1989 that stopped an entire embassy from burning to the ground. "He's not just a vet," Valdez said. "He's a protected asset, and you just tossed him in a cell like a drunk." Harold remained silent, worn, weathered, like a man too used to being underestimated. Driscoll swallowed hard. Jensen said nothing. Harold stepped forward. "You ever stop someone because they felt like a problem, even when your gut said otherwise?" Driscoll couldn't speak. "Next time," Harold said, "try asking before assuming." Then Mendes stepped forward with something in her hand, his dog tags, lost under a desk. He took them gently, rubbing his thumb across the faded numbers. "They used to call us ghosts," he said quietly. "We went where no one else would go. Got out when we could." Then he pulled a yellowed envelope from inside his jacket and laid it on the front desk. "My last mission, declassified last year, Thailand, 1985. 4 Americans rescued. A schoolhouse, a 6-year-old boy." Driscoll stared. "I've never heard of that." "You weren't supposed to," Harold replied. "We lost 4 men that day. Best I ever knew." The room fell quiet. "I've lived a long time," Harold said. "But every time someone laughs like they understand war, I wish they could carry just 1 day of it in their pocket." And Valdez leaned against the back wall, arms crossed, eyes on Harold. "Most of Harold Trammell's missions didn't exist on paper," Mendes said quietly. "That's why we monitor his name. He's not a threat. He's proof of what this country tries to forget." "But why was he flagged so fast?" Jin returned, holding a slim folder. 3 weeks ago, his name showed up on a leaked CIA list, names from an old Black Ops archive, and whoever leaked it has been tracing them. Some of those people are already missing." Harold let out a dry laugh. "Now do you see why I didn't take kindly to being dragged out of my truck like some petty thief?" Jensen rubbed the back of his neck. "I didn't know, man." "No, you didn't," Harold replied, locking eyes with him. "But you should have treated me like a man, not a threat." The tension in the room wasn't just between them anymore. It spread like smoke into every glance, every careless assumption. Valdez stepped forward. "We've been trying to keep people like Harold off the radar, because when they get flagged, it's only a matter of time." Driscoll looked at Harold again, no longer as a suspect or a veteran, but as someone he'd seriously misjudged. "I'll file a full statement," Driscoll offered. Harold raised an eyebrow. "Write it for yourself. I don't need it." Valdez glanced at his watch. "We need to go. The longer his name sits on our system, the closer he gets to being targeted." Harold slipped his dog tags back on. They made no sound, like even they had learned silence. Mendes hesitated. "You still keep in touch with your team?" Harold's voice was low. "Out of 11, I'm the only one left breathing." As they moved toward the exit, Valdez paused at the door. "There's more." Harold was on standby for an op that never launched. The Pentagon never explained why, but it's why we've kept eyes on him all these years. The air seemed to freeze. What kind of operation, Mendy? Valdez glanced at Harold. It was meant for American soil. If it had gone through, you'd be speaking about him with a lot more respect. Harold didn't flinch. I was tasked with coordination, not execution. But that file was buried for almost 30 years. Not because it didn't matter, but because it came too close to truth they weren't ready to face. Driscoll swallowed. We were just doing our job. Valdez's stare was icy. No, you were passing judgment. There's a difference. Chin stepped back in with a flash drive. All footage is uploading. Dash cams, body cams, security feeds. Jensen exhaled. Are we getting investigated? That depends, Chin said flatly, on how honest your report is and how well you remember every word you spoke since you pulled him over. Driscoll tried to hold steady. We didn't use force. Valdez stepped in. Excessive force isn't the only measure. There's tone, intent, ignorance. Some mistakes cost lives. Others cost everything. Harold's voice cut through, calm but sharp. You think I'm afraid of lawsuits? I've had snipers in my scope. What rattles me is disrespect. Not the kind you ask for, the kind you give freely. Driscoll glanced toward the sealed evidence case, Harold's pistol. Why do you even still carry that thing? Harold breathed deep. Because there are people who haven't stopped looking for the ones who stopped them. I'm not famous, but I'm remembered, sometimes by the wrong people. Mendes leaned forward. If we hadn't stopped you, you might have helped more than you hurt, Harold finished. But the way it went down could have ended a lot worse. Valdez checked his phone. Transport's here. We're moving him to a federal facility for asset review. Harold turned to leave, then stopped. I'm not here to make you feel small, he said. I just hope next time you take 2 extra seconds before deciding what kind of man you're looking at. The officers were silent. As Harold walked out, Chin handed Valdez another folder. We've flagged both officers. Command will decide whether it goes to the state. Driscoll's voice cracked. Wait, we're getting disciplined? You detained a protected intelligence asset, mocked his service, violated protocol, and mishandled classified property, Chin said flatly. What did you expect? Jensen sank into his seat, posture broken under the weight of the truth. Harold, now in the SUV, looked out the window. Most of my life, I was invisible when I mattered, and impossible to ignore when I didn't. Valdez nodded. You good? Harold didn't respond immediately. They treated me like I didn't exist. You're not the first, won't be the last. Yeah, Harold muttered. But I'm tired of being the cautionary tale. They learned the lesson, we carry the bruises. The SUV veered onto a side road, leading to a secure site. Before they arrived, Harold spoke again. You know what sticks with me most? What's that? Valdez asked. There was this 6-year-old kid in Thailand. I carried him out in a rice sack just to get him past a checkpoint. You saved him. Maybe, Harold said. Or maybe I just delayed what the world had planned for him. They arrived. Gravel crunched under Harold's boots as he stepped out. He glanced at the stars, then the dirt. You want the truth? He asked. Always. I didn't care about the arrest. I've been through worse. What breaks me is how fast they believed the worst about me without even asking who I was. Valdez didn't disagree. It won't be the last time. I know, Harold said, but it damn well should have been. Inside the station, Mendes was already dialing internal affairs. She wasn't going to let this get buried. 2 weeks later, the station looked the same on the outside. But inside, something had changed. Mendes flipped through her files. Internal affairs had come and gone, but the shift lingered. The jokes, fewer, the smirks gone. Driscoll barely spoke anymore, his badge dangling by a thread. Jensen was stuck behind a desk awaiting sensitivity training. But Harold's name? It wasn't just a case number anymore. It had become a story whispered in corners, a man they couldn't forget. Then one morning, a young man stepped off a bus and walked into the station. Early 20s, clean cut, carrying a letter. "I'm looking for Deputy Mendes." "That's me," she said. He handed her the note. Handwritten, lined paper, sharp cursive. "Deputy Mendes, you didn't have to step in, but you did. That says more about you than the badge you wear. I don't need justice. I've fought enough. But I still believe in accountability. And you're the reason I still believe that's possible." "Tell him he's not forgotten," she said softly. Back in the locker room, Driscoll sat alone. No uniform, just a notepad. On it, he wrote, "Saw a man. Didn't ask who he was. Treated him like a record, not a human." He slid it back into the drawer. No one else might read it, but he would. At a veteran resource center, Harold sat across from a young vet named Julian. "I still wake up thinking someone's coming through the door," Julian said. "It's been 3 years. I still can't turn it off." "You don't turn it off," Harold replied. "You learn where to place it." "How long did it take you?" Harold smiled faintly. "Still counting." They sat quietly, not fixed, not whole, but at peace. Back at the station, Mendes pinned Harold's letter inside her locker. No fanfare, no applause, just a private reminder. Sometimes the people we ignore carry the heaviest truths. And sometimes the stories we bury are the ones that change us the most. But just when it seemed over, just as things were settling, a new file appeared on Valdez's desk. It was stamped, "Confidential, Level 4 clearance." The name on it? Harold E. Trammell. Again. But this time, the file wasn't historical. It was active. If this story made you feel something, if it made you pause, reflect, or reconsider, then don't just scroll past. Like the video, share it. Because Harold's story isn't fiction. It's the truth too many live with. And it's time more people started listening. Subscribe for stories that don't just entertain, they wake you up.